It's not secretive, but it's a stealthy reshaft. Let's see what we're doing next. Welcome back to the McGough Shop. Jim McCleary here, 6-time top 100 best club fitter and international club maker of the year. And I went back and I went through my boxes to build, and we've covered quite a few topics. And what really works is the different styles of clubs that we work on, right? We've worked on Callaways, PXGs, you name it. Well, now that they've been out for a while, I'm starting to see now Taylormade, right? I have done at least a couple, 3 fairway woods, and not for a bad thing. It was just they had the wrong flex in the club. Love the club, just didn't like the flex of the shaft. And we've redone a few. We've switched some shafts for a few in that era. We've also done a handful of drivers, right? We've done some drivers that again, like the club, didn't like the shaft. And that happens a lot, right? And I did that a lot with older Taylormades when they have the Reacts in there. The React wasn't very good, but the head was. And when we put aftermarket stuff in there, it rejuvenated the club, and they're able to play, and it was a little bit cheaper. So again, reshafts can help, right? And so that's what we're doing today, except for these. All right, the Taylormade Stealth Irons. Now I'm going to put a few of these down. We're going to use the 8 iron as an example. Okay, let's talk about the Stealth Iron. All right, at first blush, the Stealth Iron, and this is an 8 iron, by the way, and I haven't checked for a progressive offset. Let's do that now. Progressive offset. Nope, they're normal. Okay, so this thing, the Stealth Iron, has a, we'll call it generous offset, meaning a lot, right? So if you see this and the leading edge to that, there's a lot. So this could be easily in the game improving category. Okay, that's just the design of the club. It also has a fairly wide sole. If you look at this guy, fairly wide sole. In fact, I'm going to say in the little bit wider, well, certainly it's wider than average. It's not like alien wedge kind of wide, but in a lot of cases, what we're seeing in these game improving clubs is that they have wide soles. Some will tend to go with a big radius, much like, say, the Mizuno Hot Metal, the Wilson clubs, all like doing the radius. Now, other clubs, much like this one and Strixon, tend to take on edges, right? So if you look, there's just the leading edge is very rounded and killed, but it's very flat here. Now, they're going to say, oh, there's a radius. Yeah, there is, but it's so big that it almost has this perception of being flat. Now, when you're in thick stuff, or you're a divot taker, or, fluffy sand, that kind of stuff, these things are great, right? But in hard pan, or if you're a scooper or picker, this may be detrimental to your game. And that's just, it's not, again, let's say it again, it's not because it's a bad club. It is the design of the club that doesn't match to you, okay? It just doesn't match to you. And that's what we're talking about here. So a few more technological things, and then we'll get on to the repair. All right, the Stealth has what they call the back cap, or the black cap. And you see that right there. All right, so this whole cap right here, all this is basically a badge or a piece of fiber wound medallion. And what it's done is it's removed a truckload of weight right here. And so what do they do with that weight? Like everybody else in the iron design, they put it at the bottom. And we're going to find out, we're going to show you why here in a minute. So they take all this weight here and they throw it across the sole. You can see there's a lot of sole there, right? And there's a big sole there and a pretty generous face. So they had to remove some weight, and that's where it came from. Now, they also used a 450 stainless as a face. I think it's a little firmer, not necessarily a little more flexible, but they talk about getting great ball speed. Okay, well, let's talk about that. They also have kept the slot, right? The slot here, and what that's done is we've seen that on other clubs, Wilson, and you'll see that what that does is it allows the face to give a little bit in the iron right here. Okay, it's a good little design. Plus, there's a little bit back in here. That one I think is more in line so you can bend them. All right. Now, there's one more piece in here, and what it is, it's an echo. What they called it, an echo bar. I think is what they call it, echo bar. And basically, it's a piece that goes right across the bottom, and it's a vibration dampener. And it's a vibration dampener to make the club feel softer, i.e., more like forged. And okay, we super game improvement. Well, big game improvement. We have some technology in the way of moving weight around. We have some slots in here for flexibility. We have a newer metal that's become kind of popular here as of late in the 450 steel. Okay. We've also put in a vibration dampener, and this one they call the Echo something or another, Echo bar. And all that comes into, and the last bit I forgot to tell you, and these things are massively strong. All right, this goes beyond strong. These are massively strong with a 21 degree 5 iron. 21 degree. Now, in the day, even before the day, we thought a 27 degree 5 iron was a super duper players only kind of number. You know, it used to be 27 to 30. Now that was a long time ago. 27 is still something you'll see in players clubs. Then it became 25, and 25 was pretty strong. And it was very strong. And now 23, they're jumping by twos, you see. And the 23 is like, oh, there's no way nobody's going to go 23. Right there. 21. All right, and it gets down into, it's got a pitching wedge that is 43. There's a 6 degree gap here. It goes 5 degree gap between the 9 and the pitch, 6 degree between the pitch and the attack, and then back to 5 degrees between the attack and the sandwich. And the sandwich is at 54. You're bumping out of the sandwich category. We're about right on that ragged edge right there. So there it is. That's all of it. So now we did a fitting for a local golfer. He's 16 years old and can beat the ball, right? Can beat the ball. And what was in this thing is a KBS Max Stiff Flex in 85. And he was spraying it. Okay, he was spraying it. And we had to figure out a couple of things. Was the length of the club proper? No, it ended up being just a hair long. These things ran just a hair long. Not a big deal, but longer, but not by much. I'm not going to say it was out of control, but just a little bit more. The other part is that we found out that with his swing, and he was swinging in the stiff range at 16, doing very well, by the way, very, very whip fluid. You know, he pulled it in and then just really released it really hard at the bottom. Now, he was still spraying it once we adjusted a club. Why? It's because the club was light, 85 grams. 85 grams is very light, and that's good for some folks. It just wasn't good for him. See how this keeps going? All right, and so what we found is, and it's funny, but we found out something slightly heavier worked way better. And what does that mean? Well, something in the 95, say 85, which these things run a little light, 95. Now, I tested them on 3 different 95 shafts, and we ended up going with the Nippon 950 GH. It just tended to work a little bit better for his action that he put on the golf club. Now we tried the KBS TGIs. That worked actually pretty decent. And then we tried the Tour 90s. Tour 90s were pretty close. It was a tie for second. However, the availability took them clean out of the equation. So we were between those guys. Then I took him up to 105 to see whether or not it would be a deal. And as it turns out, it is. 105 threw him all over the place. He hit behind the ball, quality of hit went down, It was awful. So we're going to take these shafts out and we're going to put the other shafts in. So it's basically a reshaft. The boxes to builds number 15, a stealthy boxes to builds. See how I kind of wove that in? All right, so the question here is, for folks that have never seen it before, in the day, Taylormade had an extra notch in there, and it took a special ferrule, and they were rack LTs is what they did. Now every once in a while you'll see that. What we got to figure out is, and that's the real problem with some of these builds, is you have to take them apart in order to understand what it is you need. So let's go to the bench. Let's do a real quick take apart on this, and we'll go from there. The other thing I wanted to mention on these irons is, you see that slot? The slot stops at the 9, or right here actually. 9 pitch and gapping on. It's a solid club, and you see that a lot when those types of clubs. All right, so we're going to go back to the bench. We're going to take this guy off, and then we're going to see what we need, and then we'll talk about reshafting. Okay, so I have some more projects that are coming along, and those are some more Taylormade, so it's a Taylormade week. All right, like everything else, if you're going to do this, use a glove, that way you don't burn your hand. And so we'll put that on. I don't do it on some because I know I'm not going to get too hot. Now, there are a couple of precautions here that I'm thinking. This isn't, nobody's taken these apart that I know of. But what we're looking here is, this is a piece of plastic / medallion / woven stuff, and we really want to keep the heat away from there. The other part is, we want to keep the heat away from the slots, because there's a rubber piece in here. So we've got to be very, very, very particular about applying the heat. So that's the reason why the butane torch is going to work really well in this particular instance, because I can really keep the heat in one spot. About a minute. Let's see what we got. Oh, it came out easy. We like that. All right, let me clean this up and we'll come back and we'll talk about it. All right, so what we see here is, it's another club that has a pretty good size shoulder in it. So we need a ferrule that is going to, well, we need to do two things. Number one, we got to figure out what size shaft this is going to be. So we use our 370. In it goes. So it's a 370 shaft. You can try the 355 would certainly go in there. If it wasn't a 370, that wouldn't be able to go in there either. So we know it's a 370 shaft. Okay, that one's down. Now we need to figure out what kind of ferrule would fit in there. Now this is an old Taylormade ferrule, and that fits in there pretty good. All right, let's see if we got something else. All right, so now we have that one. That one moves around, doesn't move around either, and that's a good look. So I think we're going to go with this guy. So we're going to give it a black ferrule, a little shorter than, say, the 5/8, but I think it's a good look with the black on the black. I mean, it's going to look stealthy, right? So we're going to use those. So let's pull out enough for those. So now we know it's a a parallel tip 370, and we know the ferrules that are going to go in there. Now we got to check our shafts that we're going to go put in there. Now, Nippon does offer a 370 and a 355 tip in discrete lengths. That's a good thing. However, if we don't get, and it becomes an availability issue, all right? So if we don't have a very big availability, then you might have to go with one or the other and shim it. So we're going to find that out also as we're doing this. So we're going to take apart all the clubs. We're going to weigh everything just like we did once before, and then we'll get ready and we'll show you an assembly piece of this. So let's get to taking things apart. Okay, we've got it set up now. We've got all the heads taken apart. We've got all the shafts ready to go. Got our ferrules set up. We've got our weights that we're going to do in this. Now, all right, Jim, why are we using weights? Well, because the length of the shaft that we are putting together here is going to be short, because the golfer was shorter. And when we have to make up for a little bit of weight. Jim, I know you've heard that you don't like a lot of swing weight, and I don't. However, there is a balance that needs to be maintained, and the amount of length that I'm cutting off, I'm going to need to put those weights in there to give the club a level of feel. All right, and the way that we're going to cut them, they're going to get progressively heavier as they get down the set. So they're going to be a decent weight at the top, and then they're going to get slightly heavier as they go down the bottom, which works for the way that this golfer swings. All right, so let's get moving. So we'll start at the bottom, work our way up. The first thing we do is put our ferrule on with a little bit of glue, and that little bit of glue is what keeps it from sliding into the future. A little bit of glue on the tip weight, not a bunch, enough for it to get in there. And then we press it down in there. Get a little bit of glue at the end. What I like doing is checking and make sure that we have a nice even distribution of the epoxy and not on the outside as that would look like. All right, I'm going to line it up. Make sure we seat it. Take our 2-inch squares of just regular paper towel. Make sure we wipe off the excess. And then put a little piece of tape on it, make sure nothing turns or twists on us. And we put it up on the rack. So we learned a little something about the Taylormade Stealth Irons. One, they're very, very strong. Number two, they've moved some weight around in order to put the lower center of gravity in the club head so you can get a little bit higher ball flight. Three, they're using 450 steel on the face along with the slotted technology in order to give you that flexibility. So along with the lower lofts, you're going to get some pretty fast ball speeds. I think ball speeds is relative to the loft, so that's where that's coming from. It also has an echo bar of some variety in order to help reduce vibration. It gives it a look of a bladed kind of setup or a very shallow cavity, i.e. a player's look for a more forgiving club. It's a little bit bigger in the face, has a generous amount of offset. Okay, now was the shafts that are in it not, or were they bad? No, they just weren't for the golfer. Was the length in the club bad for the golfer? Yes, they were a little bit long. In fact, they're a lot bit long. He's a shorter golfer. So in order to make all that balance happen, I put in a 6-gram weight. That's what you saw me putting in order to, it's not making up for the length I'm taking off, but it will transfer and it will have a little slightly lighter feel than it did before. But the total weight will be there, and that's what we're really going for because we're putting on some pretty big grips. So this thing's just a balancing act, particularly when you put on these jumbo-sized grips. So we weighed everything out. We made sure it was all good. We spine and flowed, and then we put them together just like you saw. Now we got to wait 24 hours, and we'll put them together, and we'll show you how they turned out. All right, as you can see, the Stealthies, they turned out pretty good. I like the shafts that we put in them, the ferrules that we stuck on them. turned out pretty good. They fit inside the hosel, which is truly the issue in most of those types of builds. And we cut them down to the length, which was a little bit shorter than average. Not much, but a little bit, and we cut them down in a little bit of a different fashion than most. And they seem to fit. After a little bit of a bend, now we have a completed set. Again, like and subscribe. Watch us on Mondays on our live stream, What's in My Drawers Golf Talk. And if you got any questions about builds, or if you get a little bit out of your depth and you need a little bit of help, just email us, mcgolfshop@roadrunner.com or clubmaker@mcgolf.net, and we'll set something up with you. And as always, let's see your scores. Go low.